So, right, crime. This is what we're here to talk about.
Yes.
I'm still reeling from the show. I absolutely loved it. It's absolutely brilliant, I thought. Very intense,
Yeah, but
very heavy, but like, properly brilliant. And yeah, and can you just sort of tell us generally about it, basically, and sort of like how it came about? Has it sort of like been a long process?
yeah, it's been a long process. I mean, I guess it's an example to me now of, don't give up. If you really believe in something, don't give up. I've been working with director and producer way back, and they said, we want to do something else with you. And I was like, okay, let's go and meet Irvine. I know Irvine, and he's an amazing writer. Maybe he has something that he wants to do. So we flew to Dublin, and out of that conversation, he said, have you read Crime, which had just come out in 2008? And I was like, no, I hadn't. So we all went away and read it, and everyone just was blown away by it, but we couldn't quite get anything going. And then 5 years ago, I met Tony Wood, Buccaneer, and he's a huge fan of Irvine, and he said, I want to do it. Let's do it together. So we both decided to produce it and develop it. And eventually we decided that, or it became problematic to get the story as is in the novel told, which is set mostly in Miami. So Tony sort of came up with the idea of just doing the backstory of the origin story of the whole case that happens in Edinburgh. And that we thought would be easier to sell to a British broadcaster. And that's what happened. So ITV commissioned it, and then commissioned the script, then the series, and then it ended up in Britbox, because I think Britbox, it's more of a Britbox show in that it's like cable, the equivalent of an American cable show, in that it's dark, the language is pretty, of a vernacular, and I think when you're behind a paywall, you sort of have a bit more license to, not that there's not great shows on ITV and BBC, there are, but we were given license to be authentic, I think.
Yeah.
And then I'd worked with James Strong before, so I was like, I think James should direct it. And so he came on, and he was part of the process of development as well. And that's kind of, that's how it happened.
Yeah. Was the actual filming, when was that done? Was it kind of a lockdown baby kind of thing?
Yeah, it was April this year until mid-August.
Oh, okay.
It was, challenging, but we managed to do it. It was pretty basic, but I think because of the commitment of everyone, the cast and the crew was so pretty incredible that we just got through it. And that shows, I think, that it was certainly challenging to film in these circumstances, but we did it.
Yeah. And the character himself, I mean, it seems like something you could really get your teeth into. I mean, there's a lot of demands on you, it seems, and he's such a sort of complex guy, very nice, very with it, in some ways, but obviously carrying a lot, which through in pretty extraordinary ways. How did you sort of like approach him?
Well, it's been living with me for quite some time, so I know him pretty. I mean, I read the novel like 20 times, and all the documentaries that exist about serial killers and books that exist, I've read, I've watched, spoken to police advisors, and I think it's a question of then relating all that to your own life. And there's a lot of me in that character. I mean, not obviously, but I understand a lot of what goes on in his world, and then you just take a leap of faith, and you're like, what if, and if this happened to me? And then there's the emotional, the because he lives at such a at the higher end of the spectrum of emotional intensity, shall we say. And so that is bubbling under the surface. I mean, you get 10 minutes, a little bit of levity at the beginning, and then it's right into the story. And what's great, I think, about it is that it's more interesting in character than it is in plot. Plot's important. The story is there, that exists, and he's ultimately trying to find a serial killer. But it's really about his relationship with that serial killer, his relationship with himself, and how his past comes up to really haunt, but also inform and help his investigation into the serial killer, and ultimately what sacrifice he's prepared to make in order to, I guess, open himself up to this guy so that he will reveal information that he needs, because ultimately he wants closure for the families.
Yeah.
He feels it, and his downfall is also his, the plus points for Lennox, in that he's so empathetic that it kills him. You just see the pain that he goes through every time something happens and he doesn't get what he needs, and how much it matters to him. So it's not just a job for him. No. It's oxygen, it's food for his soul, and he needs to feel that he's a shark. He won't, if he sleeps, he drowns, so he just can't. And he'll sleep because he's hit a wall and he's been knocked out. And then he's up and he's away. And he's thinking all the time about these cases and, what has he missed and how do I get what I need to get? And it's pretty dark, but ultimately I think it's a very humane piece of writing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. And there's that just coming off that, there's that moment where he sort of hugs the victim's mum, and he's almost in tears when he has to break the news that her daughter's dead, and that's really something you don't genuinely see in sort of cop shows, do you? That level of emotional revelation, I guess.
Yeah, he feels it. I mean, and you see the effect it has on him, and it's not a question of, I'm really sorry, but she's gone.
Yeah.
He, man, had the affront to his humanity is enormous.
Yeah.
So he's with her. And I think she feels that as well.
Yeah.
Comes up to him at the funeral and says, he cares. This man, he cares. And that is true, from his perspective. And so, it's everything that helps him also hurts him as well.
Yeah.
So he's never at a point where he ever feels that he's deserved of, any kind of victory or small victory that he achieves throughout the course of the story, because he carries with him this cloak of shame that, he's had his entire life. And so part of the process of him allowing things out of his, his dark history, comes about because of the investigation, and because what happened to this little girl, and it's necessary, and also it's part of a process of some kind of healing for him, but it's a sacrifice that he makes in order to achieve something with Mr. Confectioner. But you see the kind of the lack of desire. It's not because he's a very intelligent guy. It's the lack of ability for him to able to healthily examine what happened to him, because it's just part of a culture and an upbringing that is very difficult for him to talk about that.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, as a bloke watching it, and we write quite a bit on sort of masculinity and things like that. It was interesting to see that burden of shame and how it related to sort of drink and how you cope with your past, and how hard that is to sort of move through. I thought that was a really interesting thing. It really got into the depths of that, I thought.
Yeah, I know it is. I mean, the masculinity thing is a great issue, and he embodies that sort of. He's a real sort of alpha male, but at the same time, his sensitivities are encapsulate all the females around him. I mean, the fact that Drummond he loves because she's a woman working in this very male-dominated environment, but by God, she holds her own. And he is very much of the opinion, women can do it as well as and better than men on many occasions. And, fuck this misogyny shit. I fucking won't have anything to do with that. In the same way as the racism and anything that withholds people's ability because of who they are in their heart and their soul. He fucking abhors that, And this young girl that dies, she won't get to have her birthday. She won't be able to have, maybe she'd have gone to university. Maybe she would have been the person who cures cancer. Who knows? Every life matters, And these kids who live in these environments, that's the environment I was brought up in Scotland. So I get it. I understand why Irvine writes like that,
Yeah. What was your area like compared to Irvine's? I don't really know.
He was brought up in Muirhouse, similar, I think. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
a council. Listen, I mean, I love Scotland, and Fife
Yeah.
is a great place. And, you know, I had great friends growing up in Fife and Woodside. Lived on the end of a town, council estate, you know. Yeah, I mean, the rough areas, very rough areas. And
Yeah.
it's what it is. My mum always used to get really upset with me when I talked about, you know, my hometown, but I have fondness for it, you know. I just haven't been there very much over the last few years. But yeah, council estates and pretty rough school, and, you know, fights a lot all the time, similar expectations, you know. So my heart is with them.
Well, there's that interesting playoff with some of the more upper class characters within the series, where they seem to sort of have a view of the whole place being broken, everyone's from broken homes, so really there's no hope for any of them, and what more do you expect?
Yeah, imagine taking that as an analogy, the fact that this kid's father fucked off to Canada when she was a kid, and that's akin to saying, look what happened to her, she got murdered. So that same thing's going to happen to Scotland if it breaks away from the fuck off, you arrogant twat. It's not.
Yeah,
it's an interesting, the independence issues dealt with and that, but I mean, you know, it's never been, I mean, you know, it doesn't play a huge part in our story, but it's touched upon, for sure.
When you're dealing with sort of heavy subject matters, how do you sort of deal with it in terms of sort of getting away from it, or leaving it? Are you quite good at sort of leaving it behind once you're off set?
I mean, to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think with this you really do. I mean, I think you're thinking about it all the time. I mean, my downtime reading was serial killers and documentaries about serial killers. I don't think you just want to leave it behind. I mean, I was on my own during the week. I'd come home. When I was home with my family, I'd switch off and I'd go out, take my kid to the park, and, you know, be involved in that world. It's very hard to stop thinking about it, and so I'll be honest with you, you know, I didn't. Constant, all the time. But that's part of that I wanted to do, because I just was enjoying the fact that we were making this, and that you know, the character was obviously there around me all the time. And you don't want to make it sound wanky, like saying, yeah, I carried this guy with me. I mean, he became so much part of me anyway. So it was just there, and you know, it's kind of necessary really to keep on it.
Yeah. And how was it, the actual sort of being on set? Because presumably there must have been some. Yeah, I don't imagine it's sort of, you know, a laugh a minute when you're doing, when you're in this show. But I mean, it must have been, you know, was it still time to have fun? I mean, it was post-lockdown stuff, so just the excitement of being back on set, I imagine, must have been a thing.
Well, that's great. I mean, listen, we had an amazing cast, and so we all got on very well. But, you know, you have to adhere to the COVID regulations. No kind of socializing, much socializing afterwards. So yeah, it's a different kind of world that you operate in. But it was great being on set, really great, and great being back in Scotland as well.
Yeah,
which I loved.
Yeah. How did you cope with the whole lockdown thing? Were you did you sort of write a novel or learn a language? Or
yeah, I wrote 10 fucking novels and Italian, Greek, and fucking brushed up on my Latin. I cycled like a maniac every day.
Right.
I'd go for 20-mile cycle rides.
Yeah.
And I would be with my kids and my wife, and we just, you know, did what everyone else did. I bought a barbecue.
Job done.
That was it. I enjoyed it. I liked it. And I was straight back to work. And then work. And so it was nice. But yeah, it was intense doing this show, that's for sure. But I enjoyed it. Certainly not complaining about it. I mean, I loved making it.
Yeah. Well, did you, in your research, were you looking at sort of cops, police officers, people like that? I mean, he's described Eric Cantona, isn't he, of the force there?
Well, it's like, don't be my Yap Stam. Don't be David fucking Beckham. my Eric Cantona. He was an ally of Ferguson. He was brilliant, and he, you know, I mean, I guess he just, you know, Yap Stam, he saw as being a betrayal, and Beckham was like this showy fucking, as saw him as this narcissist who just, you know, was more concerned about his hairstyle than. But a bit unfair to Beckham, because I think he only changed his hairstyle 35 times as opposed to 100 times, is what Fergie said once. No, Beckham was a brilliant footballer. Listen, I love Man United. I'm a huge fan of Man United. But I think that, yes, I did. I looked at documentaries, you know, about investigations, and there's all these different cop characters. There was this one guy called Ian Gold that I spoke to a lot. He was brilliant, really brilliant at giving me information about police investigations, and so there's a lot out there, and you keep watching it, and you know, it's all very, very, very helpful.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, because when you, as a viewer, when you watch crime stories, you often, and watch a lot of it, like I do, you would kind of end up thinking, I could probably solve a crime. Does that happen when you're acting as well? Do you feel like you might be able to do a proper case?
What? No. No, I don't. I mean, I think good cops are fucking brilliant, and you know, there's a process. Let's not understand the process, and I'm curious. That's for sure. I have a very curious. I think I would be. I wouldn't be lazy. I would be meticulous, and I would be, you know, full of passion, and I'd be tenacious, and I'd be like a dog with a bone. So, in that respect, I'd be useful. But cops are great. You said the good cops are fantastic. And, you know, I made my affinities with the character were emotional affinities and life experience affinities, as opposed to, you know, that stuff you have to learn through talking to cops and just saying, why did they do? Tell me what happens. Okay, a kid goes missing. What's the procedure? What do you do? What's the first thing you do? So you go through all that, and I have books of notes from this guy Ian, who just said, this is what's, it's all there. But great, I love doing all that. I love research. It's great.
Yeah. As a parent, though, I watched it. It's like a worst possible nightmare as well. I mean, it really. I mean, I'm sure it would affect everyone, but as a parent, it really kind of gets you where it hurts, doesn't it? The show. I think.
Yeah.
I didn't really.
It is. I mean, listen, you watched a lot of shows, so whether it's different. I mean, you know, what do you think about it as a cop show?
What do I think? I'll tell you one thing that I really liked about it, because I mean, I think it's the heightened emotionality, as you said. That was really, it's really intense, and it kind of doesn't let you go. And I think seeing a male character crying and expressing himself like that is, because often you find that even in, say, like you know, the Hannibal Lecter sort of series, you kind of got emotional, empathetic guys, but you don't, you know, they're still quite cool. You know, whereas this guy lets it go.
Yeah.
And I thought it was an interesting relationship with Joanna as well. What was it like with working with her and developing that?
She's brilliant. Yeah, I mean, we're very conscious of providing all the female characters with, you know, with great character, and you know, both of them, Angela Griffin and Joanna van der Helm, are both fantastic actors. Really fucking brilliant. And so it just helps me as well. And it was important, especially female characters, because, you know, because of the times we're living in, but because, you know, they're not token female characters. They're there, and they have great character arcs. And she represented, Joanna's character, Drummond, represents the kind of the new face of policing, and she shows very clearly why, you know, misogyny is detrimental to the fucking police force, because she's brilliant and she's bright and she helps, you know. So that was important.
Yeah. Great. Just final few things. Just wanted to ask, firstly, sort of like back in the day, what made you first want to sort of get into acting? Was there any like movie or a person that you thought, oh, that's this?
Yeah, I mean, De Niro, Scorsese, Alec Guinness, Brando, Pacino, all those actors. I mean, I remember watching Mean Streets and just being completely blown away by it. But You know,
Yeah.
a lot of the, you know, Alec Guinness early movies, you know, Man in the White Suit, things like that. I loved all those movies. Westerns I loved as well.
Yeah.
Then I did a play at school, and I just completely blown away by it. You know, I did Suddenly Last Summer, Tennessee Williams, and you know, just loved just being on a stage and being, you know, playing someone else, pretending to be someone else. Just really got off on that, and
Yeah.
you know, that's kind of what really gripped me. And I read Death of a Salesman, and my dad was a salesman, and he ended up being a salesman. So I was like, wow, this is incredible, that how writing transcends continents and, you know, grips you. And yeah, and so I just, you know, I wasn't good enough to play for Hibs, so I had to do something else.